In psychology, they say that one of the strangest yet most common fears is the fear of happiness itself. On the surface, it seems absurd. Why would anyone fear the very thing we spend our lives chasing? Yet for many, joy feels dangerous, almost unbearable. The moment life becomes too good, too peaceful, too full of light, a shadow creeps in, asterisk, this won't last. Something bad is coming. If I allow myself to feel this, I'll only suffer more when it's taken away. Asterisk, for these people, happiness is not safety. It is risk. Smiles feel fragile. Laughter feels temporary. Love feels doomed. Instead of relaxing into joy, they brace for its collapse. They live as if happiness is a trap, a brief moment of calm before the storm. And so, instead of embracing it, they keep distance from it, believing that if they never let joy in fully, they will never be destroyed by its loss. Psychologists explain that this fear often grows from early experiences where joy was followed by pain. A child celebrates and then is punished. A family laughs and then a fight erupts. A moment of pride is crushed by criticism. Over time, the nervous system learns a cruel association. Happiness leads a hurt. And so the adult, even decades later, feels a quiet dread when good things happen, as if joy itself carries a curse. This fear can also be shaped by culture and belief. In some traditions, happiness is seen as arrogance, tempting fate, or forgetting humility. People are taught not to fly too high, not to celebrate too loudly, not to trust good fortune. They learn to mute their joy, to smile cautiously, to live small so that tragedy does not notice them. The result is a life half-lived. These individuals rarely allow themselves to feel fully alive, because every joy is cut short by suspicion. They sabotage relationships when they grow too close, abandon opportunities when they feel too good, downplay achievements to avoid pride. They call it realism. But underneath lies fear. Fear that happiness is a debt life will soon collect. In psychology, they say that fearing happiness is not about rejecting joy. It is about fearing the pain of losing it. And until that fear is named and understood, joy will always feel like a threat instead of a gift. In psychology, they say that the fear of happiness does not remain hidden inside. It leaks into every part of life, shaping how people love, how they work, how they dream, and even how they see themselves. To those living with this fear, joy feels like walking on thin ice. The brighter the moment, the more fragile it feels. And so they begin to move through life cautiously, never letting their full weight rest on joy, always waiting for crack beneath their feet. In love, this fear is devastating. When affection grows deep, when a partner's love feels steady and warm, the anxious voice awakens. Asterisk, this is too good. They will leave. Something will go wrong. Asterisk, instead of leaning into closeness, the person pulls away. Picking fights, withdrawing, sabotaging. They do not do this because they dislike love, but because they fear the crash that might follow it. To protect themselves from future heartbreak, they wound the relationship in the present. Psychologists call this anticipatory grief, the pain of losing something before it is even gone. In friendships, the pattern is quieter but just as powerful. Moments of laughter feel suspicious, as if joy with friends cannot last. The fearful mind whispers, asterisk, if they knew the real me, they would not stay. If I depend too much on this, it will hurt when it ends. Asterisk, and so they hold back. They smile but do not reveal. They spend time together but guard their hearts. Over time, friends may feel distance, sensing that the connection never reaches full trust. The fear of losing the friendship prevents them from ever fully having it. At work and in success, the fear takes another form, self-sabotage. When promotions come, when achievements shine, instead of celebrating, they panic. Asterisk, if I enjoy this, I'll lose it. If I succeed too much, people will envy me. If I get too comfortable, I'll fall harder when I fail. Asterisk, and so they downplay achievements, refuse opportunities, or push themselves into exhaustion so that success feels earned rather than stolen. To others, this looks like humility or work ethic. But underneath lies fear, the fear that joy and success is dangerous. Even in small, ordinary moments, the fear intrudes. A sunny day feels suspicious. Asterisk, It will rain tomorrow. Asterisk, a long stretch of peace feels eerie. Asterisk, something bad must be coming. Asterisk, a moment of laughter is quickly followed by guilt. Asterisk, I shouldn't be this happy when others suffer. Asterisk, instead of resting in the present, they live in the shadow of imagined disasters. The nervous system never allows them to sink into joy, because it equates joy with vulnerability. The cost of this fear is profound. Life becomes a series of half moments. Happiness tasted but never swallowed. The person never allows themselves to fully feel success, love, pride, or peace. They keep joy at arm's length, convinced that distance will protect them from pain. But the paradox is cruel. And try to avoid the pain of losing happiness, they end up never experiencing happiness at all. In psychology, they say that fearing happiness is like living in a house with all the lights off because you are afraid of the dark. The darkness is already there, but the fear prevents you from ever seeing the beauty within the light. In psychology, they say that no fear grows in isolation. Every fear has roots. And the fear of happiness, strange as it may seem, is often one of the deepest rooted of all. It is not born overnight. It grows in soil made of childhood experiences, cultural teachings, and the unhealed wounds of loss. By the time it takes hold in adulthood, joy itself feels suspicious, as if life has proven too many times that brightness is always followed by shadow. For many, the roots begin in childhood. Imagine the child who comes home proud of a drawing, only to be scolded for making a mess. Or the child who laughs too loudly at dinner and is silenced with a harsh look. Or the child who tastes a rare moment of warmth, only for it to vanish in anger or neglect the next day. Their nervous system learns a cruel equation. Happiness equals danger. As adults, they may not remember every incident, but the body remembers. Smiles tighten in their chest. Laughter feels unsafe. Joy is haunted by the echo of punishment. Other roots are cultural. In some families or societies, too much joy is seen as arrogance or foolishness. Parents warn children not to tempt fate by being too happy, not to jinx good fortune by speaking it aloud. Celebrations are muted, successes downplayed, emotions restrained. The message is clear. Happiness attracts loss. Better keep joy quiet, controlled, hidden, lest life take it away in vengeance. Adults raised with this mindset often feel guilty for joy, as if happiness is an indulgence they do not deserve. Trauma carves the deepest roots. Those who have lived through sudden tragedy often fear happiness most of all. If joy once existed right before disaster struck, the mind forever links the two. The person thinks, asterisk, last time I was happy, I was blindsided. If I let myself be happy again, something terrible will follow. Asterisk, this is not irrational. It is the brain's attempt to protect. But the protection is costly, because it cages a person in anticipation, never allowing them to rest in peace when life is actually calm. Even collective history can play a role. Children of parents or grandparents who lived through war, famine, or oppression often inherit a quiet suspicion of happiness. Stories of survival, warnings against naivety, cultural trauma, all teach that joy is fleeting and dangerous. This legacy becomes embedded in family narratives. Asterisk, don't celebrate too much. Don't trust good times. Stay prepared. Asterisk, without realizing it, entire generations pass down the belief that joy cannot be trusted. Psychologists call this anticipatory anxiety, the inability to relax in good moments because the body expects pain. The nervous system confuses calm with threat, as if the absence of chaos is only the prelude to its return. And so, even in safe, loving, abundant lives, people feel restless when happy. Their body whispers, asterisk, don't relax, don't enjoy this. Something is coming. Asterisk. In psychology, they say that to understand the fear of happiness, one must look not at the joy itself but at the story surrounding it. The fear does not come from happiness being wrong, but from the memory that happiness was once punished, stolen, or cursed. And until those roots are uncovered, joy will always carry a shadow too heavy to bear. In psychology, they say that the fear of happiness is not always loud. It does not always scream, asterisk, I am afraid of joy. Asterisk, more often, it whispers in subtle acts of sabotage, Decisions that seem rational on the surface but are guided by an invisible dread. Over time, these whispers accumulate, shaping a life that feels safe but small, controlled but colorless, secure but profoundly unfulfilled. In relationships, this fear shows up as withdrawal just when intimacy deepens. The person who longs for closeness suddenly pulls away when love becomes too warm, too consistent, too safe. They pick fights over trivial matters, create distance with silence, or convince themselves their partner is too good to be true. Better to ruin the relationship themselves, they believe, than to wait helplessly for happiness to be stolen. Psychologists call this self-protection through preemptive loss, abandoning joy before joy abandons them. In careers and personal ambitions, the fear hides behind modesty or realism. Promotions are declined, risks avoided, dreams shelved. The person tells themselves they are being practical. Asterisk, I don't need more, I should be content. Asterisk, but beneath the modest words lies fear. Asterisk, if I reach too high, the fall will destroy me. If I allow myself success, it will only be temporary. Better not to want too much. Asterisk, opportunities slip away, not because of lack of talent, but because joy itself feels dangerous. Even in daily pleasures, the sabotage continues. A holiday feels indulgent, so they cancel it. A moment of pride feels arrogant, so they dismiss it. A burst of laughter feels too loud, so they quiet it. They treat joy like a forbidden fruit, tasting it briefly, then punishing themselves for desiring more. Instead of living fully, they live cautiously, half present, never allowing their hearts to expand. Psychologists explain that this pattern creates a life of chronic dissatisfaction. The person does not experience the full depth of suffering because they avoid risks that might break them. But neither do they experience the full depth of joy because they avoid the risks that might fulfill them. They live in a narrow middle ground, safe from extremes, but also safe from meaning. The tragedy of this fear is not just the absence of joy, but the erosion of identity. When someone continually avoids what makes them feel alive, they lose touch with who they truly are. Dreams fade, passions dull, love turns mechanical. Work becomes obligation. Life becomes a performance of being fine rather than an authentic experience of being alive. In psychology, they say that the fear of happiness is one of the most subtle prisons because its bars are invisible. No one else may see them, and even the person inside may not realize they are caged. But the result is unmistakable. A life reduced to safety at the cost of joy, a heart trained to survive but forbidden to soar. In psychology, they say that healing from the fear of happiness does not happen in one grand revelation, but in 1,000 small permissions. The anxious heart cannot be forced into joy. It must be invited. And so the journey begins not with fireworks, but with a whisper. Asterisk, it's safe to smile. It's safe to feel. It's safe to stay here, even if it doesn't last. Asterisk, the first step is awareness. Many people who fear happiness do not realize they are afraid of it. They think they are simply cautious, practical, or realistic. They say, asterisk, I don't want to get my hopes up. Asterisk, but psychology explains that this is avoidance disguised as wisdom. Naming the fear is powerful. To say, I'm scared of being happy because I fear losing it, begins to break its hold. Fear thrives in silence. Spoken aloud, it begins to shrink. The second step is allowing small joys. The fearful mind often rejects happiness in big moments, love, success, achievement. But it can begin to practice with the small ones. The warmth of sunlight on the skin, the taste of a meal, the sound of laughter. By letting these moments linger, even for seconds longer than before, the nervous system learns that joy is not always punished. Slowly, happiness begins to feel less like a trap and more like a companion. The third step is rewriting memory. Trauma teaches that joy leads to pain, but healing teaches otherwise. Therapy, reflection, and supportive relationships help to separate the past from the present. The person learns, asterisk, yes, joy once ended in loss, but that was then. This moment is new. Asterisk, the nervous system, given repeated safe experiences of joy, rewires itself. It stops bracing for disaster every time happiness arrives. The fourth step is embracing vulnerability. To be happy is to be exposed, to loss, to change, to impermanence. But psychologists say that vulnerability is not weakness. It is the gateway to authentic life. Those who learn to accept this truth discover that happiness is not about guarantees. It is about presence. They stop asking, will this last forever? And begin asking, can I love this moment, even if it doesn't? And finally, the deepest step is self-compassion. Many who fear happiness also carry guilt. I don't deserve to feel good when others suffer. I'm not worthy of joy. Healing requires breaking this lie. Joy is not earned. It is a birthright. Self-compassion teaches a fearful heart that being alive itself is reason enough to embrace moments of light. In psychology, they say that overcoming the fear of happiness is not about erasing fear, but about learning to carry it differently. Fear may still whisper, but it no longer commands. And as the heart learns to stay, even briefly, in moments of joy, something miraculous happens. Happiness stops being a threat and starts becoming home. In psychology, they say that the true transformation begins the moment happiness is no longer treated like an enemy, but like a fragile friend finally welcomed home. At first, the anxious heart greets joy with suspicion, bracing for the storm. But slowly, through courage and repetition, the body learns a new rhythm. Happiness arrives, lingers, and, surprisingly, nothing collapses. The storm does not always follow. The earth does not always split. Sometimes, happiness simply stays. This shift changes everything. In relationships, where fear once whispered, "Don't trust this, it won't last," the heart now whispers back, even if it ends, I am still whole. Love becomes freer. Instead of sabotaging intimacy, the person leans into it, not demanding perfection, but savoring presence. A partner smile is no longer a countdown to loss. It is simply a smile to be cherished here and now. And in that cherishing, love grows deeper than fear ever allowed. At work and in personal growth, transformation feels like liberation. Where once success was muted, achievements dismissed, opportunities avoided, the person now allows celebration. They permit themselves to feel pride without guilt, to taste accomplishment without dread. Failure is still possible, but it no longer overshadows joy. They begin to understand that happiness and success is not arrogance, but gratitude. Each milestone is embraced instead of diminished. In daily life, even the smallest joys become safe again. A song on the radio, sunlight through the window, a quiet moment of laughter. These no longer carry the weight of suspicion. Instead of cutting them short with worry, the person allows them to unfold. This practice accumulates, moment by moment, teaching the nervous system that joy is not always punished. And more often joy is allowed, the easier becomes a trust. Psychologists describe this as a rewiring of the brain's threat response. Where once the body reacted to happiness with alarm, heart racing, tension rising, it now learns calm. The absence of chaos is no longer a warning sign, but a welcome state. The body begins to rest in peace instead of bracing for impact. This physiological change is profound. Stress hormones decrease, resilience increases, health improves. Spiritually, the shift is even more radical. Happiness is no longer seen as a fragile gift waiting to be stolen, but as a natural state of being human. The person begins to understand that joy is not the opposite of suffering, but its companion, that both exist together, shaping the fullness of life. Instead of fearing impermanence, they embrace it, realizing that every moment is precious precisely because it does not last forever. In psychology, they say that when happiness is finally trusted, life expands. The cage of fear dissolves, and what remains is a heart that no longer negotiates with joy, but welcomes it fully. And in that welcome lies the ultimate discovery. Happiness was never a trap. It was always home, waiting for permission to be lived. In psychology, they say that the greatest triumph of the human heart is not in conquering the world, but in daring to fully embrace happiness after a lifetime of fearing it. For those who have lived with this fear, joy once felt like a dangerous flame, something that could burn, something that could vanish, something too fragile to hold. But in the end, the transformation is not about eliminating fear. It is about learning to carry fear gently without letting it decide the shape of life. The final stage begins when the person realizes that happiness is not the opposite of suffering, but part of the same spectrum of existence. To laugh while knowing sorrow exists, to love while knowing loss is possible, to rest in peace while aware that storms will come. This is the essence of a life fully lived. Happiness no longer feels like tempting fate. It feels like honoring life itself. In relationships, this change is profound. Where once they pulled away from intimacy to avoid heartbreak, now they lean closer. Not because they believe love will last forever, but because they have accepted that even temporary joy is worth the risk. They stop sabotaging closeness, stop testing love, stop treating affection as a trap. They learn to say, asterisk, I will love you today, without bargaining for tomorrow. Asterisk, and in the surrender, intimacy deepens into something real. In selfhood, the shift is revolutionary. The voice that once whispered, "You don't deserve this," grows quiet, replaced by a new voice. Asterisk, you are worthy of joy simply because you exist. Asterisk the old guilt, that happiness is selfish, that it must be earned, that it is fleeting, dissolves. The person allows himself to smile without apology, to laugh without guilt, to hope without shame. For the first time, they stop bracing for loss and begin embracing presence. Psychologists describe this as integration. Instead of dividing life into good that must be feared and bad that must be avoided, the person begins to see wholeness. Happiness and sorrow, success and failure, gain and loss. These are no longer enemies, but companions in the human journey. By accepting both, they finally learn to live beyond either. The nervous system, once a battlefield of alarms, learns a new rhythm. Calm is no longer suspicious. It is sanctuary. Peace is no longer eerie. It is home. The body, mind, and soul, long fractured by dread, finally align in harmony. Life becomes less about surviving what might come and more about savoring what is here. In psychology, they say that the fear of happiness can chain an entire life in shadows. But they also say that when the chain breaks, the freedom is unlike any other. Because to finally embrace joy is not to deny suffering. It is to prove that suffering did not win. It is to stand in the light, knowing night will return, but choosing to shine anyway. The final truth is this: happiness was never the danger. The danger was never allowing yourself to feel it. And once this lesson is lived, the heart no longer runs from joy. It runs toward it wide open, unafraid.